Hello, welcome to the Motherhood Village podcast. I am on with a very special guest, Miss Melissa Reilly, who is a mom of two boys. She's a clinical psychologist and a parent coach who is passionate about helping moms who are separated from their mother by physical distance, estrangement, or death, moving from feelings of insecurity, isolation, and overwhelm to a place of resilience. Through her personal and professional experience, she has come to recognize that moms without a mom experience grief as part of their motherhood experience, even if they don't realize it. The relationship moms have had or didn't have with their mothers impacts how they see themselves, but it doesn't define them. Welcome, Melissa. How are you today?
Thank you, Nikki. I am doing really well today.
Awesome. So we'll go before we kind of get into that. I'm very intrigued by your story and the whole aspect of mothering without a mom. Let's do my icebreaker round. So, what is your favorite book or one you would like to recommend?
Well, my favorite series of books actually is Harry Potter. I've read them like a million times. So
Nice.
I love fiction. So especially easy to consume fiction.
It is easy to consume. I've done some of the self-help books, some business books,
Mm.
and I do enjoy them, but I do enjoy them, but there's maybe no, I was gonna say I think all of them I've left at different parts and come back, but a fiction book, oh man, I can finish a fiction book in like a whole day if it's a big one. Yeah, so I'm with you. What are the values that guide you and your family?
Um, I think our primary values one is compassion
Mhm.
and care for one another, and um, togetherness. Right, we work as a family unit, and so we're there to support each other.
I love it. How has motherhood transformed you?
Oh, it has transformed me in pretty big ways. One of the main ways is not necessarily confidence per se, but the need to see myself as the leader and the go-to person for my son. So even if I'm anxious or uncomfortable with something, I need to just be able to push through that and get it done.
And I think to me, that's one of the toughest things about motherhood, parenthood in general, because I know dads, I mean, a lot of times we talk in the mother aspect, but fathers too is like parenting through our own stuff and unpacking it.
Hmm.
And even if we're scared and have to sometimes play it off, I do think it's okay to let children know certain things depending on the age. Like, no, mommy gets
Hmm.
scared too or whatever. But for the most part of being like, not going crazy and being the calm, strong one, even though inside you're like, but such is life. So and it takes a village to raise a child and uplift a mother who and what has been or currently is a part of your motherhood village.
First and foremost is my beloved aunt. You know, she is much more like a sister to me, and without her, I would be lost. And then I have a very supportive and nurturing faith community that is absolutely my go to, and without them, I would be lost as well.
I love that. So before we go into the journey of moms without a mom, or I guess you can speak on that too, because I was going to ask maybe some insight into how many children you have, but we'll go right into your motherhood journey if you want to talk a little bit
Mhm.
about that. And then I'm sure that's going to lead into moms without a mom. So why don't you talk a little bit about your motherhood journey?
All right. Well, I first became a mother when I married my husband. He had a son who
Mm,
had just turned 4 years old. So our oldest was born to his previous wife, and I very quickly started becoming pregnant. And unfortunately, I had three miscarriages
oh,
right in
I'm
a row.
sorry to.
And then during my fourth pregnancy, it was a medically fragile pregnancy, not surprising given my three prior losses.
Mhm.
I went into preterm labor at 26 weeks. And
Wow.
so the remainder of my pregnancy, I was on bed rest. I was in and out of the hospital um, because it never stopped. But thankfully, despite only being given a 10% chance of carrying him to full term, I was able to carry him to 37 weeks
Oh, wow.
and delivered him safely. And he is my son. So
Nice.
It was a difficult journey, but I am also a later in life mom. So he was born just days shy of my 38th birthday.
Mhm. Wow, and how old is he now?
He's 11.
Wow. So you have an
Yeah.
11-year-old. Okay, so talk a little bit about that because you don't look like you have an 11-year-old because you said you had him at 38. So I'm like, okay, love it. You
Yeah.
did. So, and I had my son at 34. So I understand that, later in life. And you were a
Hmm.
geriatric pregnancy, weren't you?
Well, thankfully, they never used that term.
Really? Oh,
So
because I've heard it
it was
being used for
advanced
like,
maternal, yeah, advanced maternal age was used,
ah,
but yeah,
okay.
I don't think I would have tolerated that
Oh,
because I find that very insulting. Right?
right? I
Advanced
know.
maternal age, I'm okay with.
Yes, and I'm glad you said that because I think, yeah, I've thought about that because when my husband and I have spoken about possibly prior to now, I think we're one and done of having another one. I was like, wait, what is that considered? And I was talking to someone, they're like, yeah, geriatric, and I'm like, well, that what, huh?
Mhm.
But I like that. I like that advanced maternal, which is what it is, So wow, so you have a bonus baby, right? So you become a
Mhm.
mom, stepmommy to which is the wonder years of I think that 4-year old thing,
Yes.
which I'm sure now that you have an
Yes.
11-year-old to know to go from newborn to the
Mhm.
full. So you're right in that thick of it, and then you have the three miscarriages, unfortunately, and now you have your miracle baby because that is amazing to say that you
Mhm.
were on the cusp of that and to go through. So wow. Now you're 11 years in. Where does the moms without a mom come in and how did that, lead you, I guess, with your motherhood journey
Mm.
to create it and what does it mean to be a mom without a mom?
Okay. So when I was pregnant and when my son was first born, that period in my life was one of the most difficult times.
Mhm,
I struggled so much, Nikki, and was shocked by it.
mhm,
Here I am, 38 years old, had been a psychologist, owned my own practice, was on my own, confident as who I was as
sure.
a woman. And once I gave birth, I felt utterly alone, inadequate, insecure about everything, and truly felt like I didn't know what I was doing and didn't have anybody, or I didn't feel like I had anybody to turn to.
Sure.
And it was at that, I didn't realize at the time, but what was happening is I was having a significant resurgence in grief over not having a mom in my life.
Mhm,
So my mother had passed away when I was 25.
mhm,
And unfortunately, she had not been a part of any of my pregnancies, but she also
sure.
wasn't a part of my marriage and other significant life changes.
Mhm,
So again, I wasn't expecting to have such a difficult time. And unfortunately, what happens is when you aren't able to recognize or label or identify what you're going through, you
mhm,
have a tendency to internalize it as meaning something's wrong with you. And that's exactly what I felt. I felt like, what in the world is wrong with me that I'm struggling so bad?
mhm,
Why is it that I can't seem to get my stuff together? Why is it that I feel like I don't know anything, even
mhm.
though I had knowledge?
Sure.
I mean, I taught human development at the master's level. I mean, like I had the
Mhm.
knowledge, but I felt so incompetent.
And may I interject there? So when you
Mhm.
say, because that is such a good point, because you are a clinical psychologist, correct?
Right?
Yes. So tell me how does that work if you can high level of saying, because to your point, you go through you have a master's in this, you've done all the research. How does that disconnect from you learning about A, but then you're going through B? Where does that come from? And have you realized what that disconnect was?
Well, the disconnect was I was grieving, and that's
You
the
were
piece
still
I didn't
grieving so long
recognize. I
and not
was
realizing that. Wow.
mhm. Well, grief never goes away, right? There's
True.
acute stages of grief, but when we have the loss of someone in our life, we continue to grieve. And
Sure.
even though I knew that, I didn't recognize that what I was feeling was actually grief. So I knew I was vulnerable to postpartum. And so I just kind of chalked it up to typical postpartum stuff.
Sure.
But what was happening was I didn't have the go to person that most women have with regards to their mom. I felt embarrassed by some of the things I was experiencing or the things that I didn't know. And so I didn't really know who to ask. And frankly, there were times I didn't know something,
Sure. Well, you
because
don't know until you don't know until you become a mom how you're going to be a mom. You don't know
exactly. And
what's
I
going to
had never,
surface, right? What's going to surface from that.
right.
Exactly.
Right. And the friends of mine that had children, I mean, their children were teenagers and young adults at that point,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so again, I was kind of out of sync.
Of course.
Um,
Yeah.
and I didn't have any, like I said, I didn't have a mom to share any of this with. I I also didn't have any other female family beyond my aunt. But she lived, 2 hours, just shy of 2 hours away from me. So there was nobody.
And I was going to ask that because I know you had mentioned your aunt. So I was going to say, since your mother did pass when you were 25, who was that kind of woman figure in your life that still helped you through some moments? And I know you had mentioned your aunt, but I guess to your point, she's far away. So you don't really have that connection to say, hey, you needing someone right there, or grandma can come, or whatever that looks like for you.
Right. Exactly. So I didn't have that built in. So I had to
Hmm.
create it. And that was part of my impetus for then, really wanting to work with other moms that don't have a mom, was to
Sure.
help them learn how to build their mom community. Because again, there isn't that built-in support that most have
Sure.
from a mom.
And how long was that time frame between you realizing, oh, this is what it is, right? I'm still grieving the loss of my mom. I don't have a mom. All of these feelings are surfacing. I'm experiencing all of these things. What was that time frame on before you created them, Moms Without a Mom, and developing the services or the things that you quote unquote provide for women who are, moms without a mom?
Years. It was
Wow.
at least 5 years before I started to be able to reflect on what was going on. I mean, part of that was, when my son was two, he was diagnosed with a number of neurological
Mm,
concerns. So life was just very, very busy. So here I have a child that's got special needs, and I'm alone, right? So I was just overwhelmed with
sure.
feeling alone, and I didn't have time to really reflect on what that meant, or the impact that it was having on me until much later. And so, in my clinical practice, I work with a lot of moms,
Hmm.
with anxiety and depression and things of that nature. And one of the things that I started seeing um, was this common thread among the clients that I had that were mothers that didn't have a mom, that there
Mm,
were some significant distinctions among these women.
okay.
And so that's when I started kind of thinking a lot about, yeah, that there are differences. There's unique features that make this process different and in some ways more challenging. And so, being the nerd that I am, I did some research and started kind of looking up information. And unfortunately, there's very little out there talking
Hmm.
specifically about moms without a mom. And
Hmm.
so that's when I decided that I would um, um, fill that gap, fill that need.
Sure. To help those women. So let me ask, are moms without moms more likely then to experience more mental health issues or to feel the inadequacy, the unworthiness, not confidence? Like what did you find on one aspect that you say, okay, there's this common denominator, if you will, as you
Hmm.
are in your own practice realizing this? And two, is there a significant difference of, let's say, women who lost their mother by death or a woman who never really knew their mom? Like maybe are there differences there, or is there just you don't have a mom and you're experiencing this?
Absolutely. So I define a mom without a mom as being any woman who doesn't have the support and guidance of a loving mom in her day to day life. So that
Okay.
includes women who've lost their mom by death, that have an emotional estrangement, or perhaps even just live far away from their mother. And the
Sure.
reason that I include all three of those categories is because they have three things in common. One is there is a grief process. So, I mean, that's kind of obvious if your mother has died, right?
Sure.
But for those women who don't have a close emotional relationship with their mom, there's a grief there as well because let's face it, we all want to have, a mom helping us through that process. And if our mother isn't supportive and loving, we still miss having that,
Sure.
right? So there's that grief process there. And then there's also grief for the moms that are separated by distance because there's that missing. I don't have what I want, and I
Hmm.
wish you were here, right?
Sure.
So there's the grief. The second piece is that there isn't a go-to person
Mm.
that a mother typically functions as. So,
Sure.
moms without a mom in all three of those categories need to actively build their community in ways that a mom that has a mom in their life doesn't. And then the third characteristic is some difficulties creating their sense of who they are as a mom, or what I like to call their mom identity.
Mm.
So, who are we as a mom? We learn about ourselves based on the relationships we have in life. And so when our mom is absent or unhealthy in some way,
Hmm.
it complicates our sense of who are we as we're becoming the same role as that person. And so that can create some struggles. Now, with regards to whether a mom without a mom has more mental illness or not, there isn't any real solid research to
Hmm.
indicate whether there is or isn't. But like I said, those three characteristics are the things that I'm seeing
Sure.
and notice.
For
Now,
sure.
anytime there's a significant loss or trauma or distress, or any lack of support in a mom's life, that can increase their vulnerability to postpartum depression, but
That's
also
what
depression or
gotcha.
anxiety at other times in their life as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if moms without a mom have a higher rate of
Hmm.
those conditions, but there isn't the research available to indicate that.
I gotcha. And that's exactly what I was going to say of being clear of when I say mental health issues is more like are, they more likely possibly to get the postpartum depression? Are they a little bit more? And I would imagine to your point, if maybe someone did, and I know you say you're always grieving, but if someone kind of tackled it on earlier, maybe really made amends with it, and I guess you, again, it goes to your point, but you don't know until you have a child of what that's going to look like for you. You can possibly do all the work.
Mhm.
Do, oh, yep, I've made peace with it.
Mhm.
I'm okay with it until you then are there and you're like, oh, wait, I didn't feel this. Now, I do want to
Absolutely.
ask, so my grandmother was bedridden for a very long time. She had rheumatoid arthritis. And you said something that kind of triggered this question on a personal aspect. So she had rheumatoid arthritis, and from a little girl, my mother had to basically take care of her in a lot of ways. And it
Mhm.
wasn't, I think, goodness, by the time I came around, I remember my grandmother still being in a wheelchair. She could at least get out of bed to go into a wheelchair. When my mom was little, I think she had a cane, but still, she always struggled with some health issues. So my mother was cooking earlier, my mom was doing things. So I kind of now fast forward in hindsight of looking at her journey, like I wonder if there's that grieving process that she might have had because she had to pick up where her mother lacked, right? And like I said, and by the time I came, I remember her in a wheelchair, but then there was a lot I remember of her being completely bedridden. So my mother had to balance two households. She couldn't go. So maybe talk. What have you seen of that experience? Because I would love to talk to my mom about that when we do talk.
Right. Well, there's a lot of energy that it takes to get support, right? Many of us, it isn't easy to ask for help, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And often we think we worry about being a burden if we ask others for help. And we as
Yes,
women often have this sense of, we need to be able to
do it
take
all.
care of our family and do it all. And if we don't, then there's something wrong with us, right?
Sure.
But that isn't true. We aren't biologically designed to meet every need that our family
Sure.
has. So we survive as a species by coming together in community and assisting each other. And so when we don't have built-in supports, we have to create that, right? And again, there's energy that goes into needing to create that. And that's
Hmm.
all well and good, right? I've created my community, and there are people that I think everybody should have in their community. But it's an underlying resource drain. And so it becomes really important for moms that don't have a mom that they recognize that it is hard, right? If you get
Hmm.
tired easily or you find yourself irritable, it's because your resources are getting drained, right?
Sure.
There's this underlying need to be on point, to take
Mhm.
care of things. And so it does become draining. And so you need to add and replenish where you can.
100%. And I will be clear, obviously my mother had a mother, but there's still
Hmm.
that aspect where she had to fill in of playing both roles. Obviously,
Absolutely.
she could physically talk to her, and I'm sure she had
Hmm.
moments to say about her own personal things, but she still didn't have certain aspects that were
Right.
lacking. So I just want to be clear there.
Yeah.
Um, what are some things that are women now listening or watching this can do if they are experiencing grief? Or, this is bringing up some things for them if they are in that position. What are some things that they can do?
Well, first of all, I want your listeners to know that it is normal. Grief is just a normal part of the human experience.
Mhm.
And our culture does not deal with it very adaptively.
Yeah.
So there's this sense of getting over it, and we never, like I said, get over it. It's with us, and it can get re-triggered at times when we don't expect, right? And
Hmm. Good
so for
point.
example, if you lost your mother as a child, when your child becomes the age that you were when you lost her, um, you may notice yourself becoming a little more irritable or short. You may notice some additional areas of sadness or a sense of fear or urgency, and that can all be because there's a grief that's bubbling up again.
Sure.
And so, first is recognize, right?
Mhm.
Okay, well, this might be grief, and so then just being compassionate and kind with oneself becomes really important. The other thing that I think is really important is to express your grief, be able to share your stories, find people that are open to hearing those stories, um, and that are comfortable enough that they aren't changing the subject. Because a lot of people are uncomfortable with grief. And so they'll be quick to try and cheer you up or change the subject, try and get you to see the bright side of things.
Mhm.
And they're just doing that because they care, right?
Sure.
But unfortunately, that typically isn't helpful and can really feel invalidating. So look for and find those that are comfortable and can hear those stories. And if you struggle with that, reach out. I'm happy to help with that. But you can write those stories down. You can make voice recordings and memos. And the other thing that I think is really helpful is I love to write letters. And I do this in a journal. And I have ongoing conversations, right? Just ongoing conversations with those that I've lost or those that I'm no longer connected with because I've had to disconnect because of it's not an emotionally healthy relationship. So just have ongoing conversations that just stay in the journal, and it's a way to just kind of express and let it go. Because once it's out in the universe, then you can do something with it. When it's in your head, it just takes up space.
Just take it. That's such a good point. I feel like gosh, yeah, the analogy of that, because yeah, it just takes up space. And I feel like it just adds the pressure, right? You
Hmm.
saying that, I can really see it just pressure. But once you kind of release, it just sets. I mean, I know even for myself, when I plan my week or whatever that is, and I have to release and kind of brain dump, as I call it, it just feels so good. And I even myself can get a better night's rest because I feel like all the stuff in my head of what I have to do for this or that is on paper and not stuck in my head. So I love that advice. Obviously, it's called the Motherhood Village podcast. So I really believe that it takes a village. And I said not only to raise a child, but to uplift a mother. I think that's super important. I think starting from mama is key, then everything else can trickle down. How do you recommend moms maybe possibly getting help or ways that they can get support in creating their village? I know you said that your faith community, what are some ways if they don't have a mother or mother figure who they can depend on or is who their go to person is?
I think there are four people or four categories of people that every mom should have, but especially moms without a mom. And so,
Sure.
first, a person I like to call a wise woman. So, this is somebody
Okay.
that knows things,
Yes.
and she's very generous in giving out that knowledge. So, you can ask her questions, she will give advice. She just knows a lot of things. And, like I said, this can be friends or it can be professionals, it can be people online. So for me, my son's nursery school teachers were wise women for me because
Mm,
they provided me with a lot of information and I could always ask them questions. So
love that.
having a wise woman, very important. The second person I like to call is the emotional supporter. And this is the
Mm,
person that's just really good at listening. So, like I was saying earlier, they don't try to cheer you up, they don't give advice, they just listen and they're comfortable with whatever emotion you're having. And I think we all need somebody like that.
yes.
The third person I like to call the go getter. And this is the person that is really good at getting things done. So, I think we all know people like this. Like they have tons of energy and they've already done five different things by 9 a.m. in the morning, right? They're just
Yes.
really good at getting things done.
Yes.
That's not me, by the way. But um, and they typically are also very generous with their time because they're
Yep.
good at doing things. And so they're awesome. You need them to pick something up at the store, they do that.
I
You've got some
gotcha.
extra laundry, right? And so yeah, I think we all need a go getter. And then the fourth person, and this is especially important for moms that have babies, is
Hmm.
a late night talker. And so this is somebody
Mm,
that we can connect with at any time. And that's becoming easier now in the digital age
yes.
because we can message, we can Voxer or
For sure.
those other things. People all over the world and in different groups, Facebook groups or other communities. We can send messages and get returns at any time. So it's becoming easier. But I think for moms without a mom, we need those four people and we have to actively seek them out because for some, their mom can fit all of those roles. But most of us, Nikki, aren't all of those. Like I'm not a go-getter. I still
Correct.
have laundry from 3 days ago in my washing machine. But I am, a good listener, right?
Gotcha.
And at this point, I know things, so I can be a wise woman for people. So know your friends' strengths, know what they're good at, so that when you need support and you're seeking out support, they can give it to you in a way that works for them. And the other recommendation that I have is finding four people, right? None of us bat an eyelash if a friend were to ask us to help them out for an hour once a month. I don't care how
Yeah.
busy you are. So if
We
you
say
have
yes.
four people, right? You have four people and you spread that out, then you've got 1 hour of help every week. And that really makes a big difference.
Oh my God, I love that. And actually, I think it's funny. I was thinking about this the other day, the way you were breaking down the four women and thinking as I've gotten older, the different women I've been in my life and what
Hmm.
I've gravitated towards as I've gotten older and realizing, and of course, we all change, but to your point, I think those four things are those four categories of people, descriptions, whatever you want to call it, are key. And as you were saying them, I'm like, yeah, I think I kind of have that in my life and, I am very fortunate. Yes, I do have my mother, but yes, she can't fit all four of those things. A lot of times I
Right?
just call to say hello. We don't really, it's that quintessential, yes, mom, uh-huh, the still whatever, whatever. But that's what we do. That's our dynamic with it. But
Right?
other women in my life that I've known very short amount of times, but we've clicked and they've become my sounding board for certain things. So I love that. And I think that's great advice. And I would also encourage women to ask for help. So I know you said
Mhm.
to actively seek. We are very, very fortunate that we are in a digital age, and even more so because even when I had my son 4 years ago, I'm sure you can say even with your son 11 years ago, the amount of Facebook groups that there are and things that there are on social media that are available are so amazing.
Yes.
But mamas, ask for help, seek out, do not be ashamed because we've all been there. I'm sure any
Mhm.
woman that you can meet at some point has been through something to your point. So
Yes.
don't be afraid to ask for help. Seek it when
Right.
you can. So, with everything that you have with Moms Without a Mom, what is your mission overall? How are you hoping to impact your community of moms? And then maybe talk about services that you provide and how people can connect with you.
Yes. So my mission is to let all moms that are out there that don't have a the guidance or support of a mom in their day to day life to know that what they're feeling, yeah, is normal for us. That there are special circumstances and challenges that are unique to us, and so that there isn't something wrong with you because you're noticing that. So that's first and foremost, that this is real. There's something going on, and you're okay,
Mhm.
right? It's hard, and it's supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
And then the second piece of that is to help them build resilience, right? To help them create community, to learn how to recognize who they are as a mom, and
Yes.
to give them permission to go through the grief process as they need to, so that they can recognize their strengths and feel good about who they are as a mom, and be the best mom for their kiddos that they can be.
I love that. So talk about also the services that you provide, full scope, and how they can connect with you.
Well, first, I've got some pretty neat free guides that I would
Oh,
love your
nice.
listeners
Yes.
to have access to. So, the first one is for moms with babies, and it's called the Care for Yourself While You Care for Your Baby guide. And this helps moms um, engage in self care when they can't separate themselves from their baby. Like I didn't have, I couldn't go get a spa day. There was nobody that would take my son. I didn't have anybody, so I had to figure
Sure.
out how to take care of myself with my son there. And so this guide has, I think, six of my favorite ways of taking care of myself. And so I highly recommend that. The other
Mm,
one is for moms of all ages, and it is for moms that find themselves getting distracted by thoughts of their mom,
mhm.
and it's getting in the way of them really enjoying their time with their kids. And so
Mm,
it's an easy strategy of how to help them really embrace their time in the moment.
sure.
So those are free. That's called the Enjoy Being a Mom Again quick guide.
Okay.
And then I offer individual coaching, both 1 month and 3 month. So people can work with me so that they can build a community, feel good about who they are as a mom, and go through the grief process in a way that feels healing to them. And I offer anybody, no strings attached, a 30-minute phone call with me. That's free.
Love that.
It's not a sales pitch. It's just truly I want to support women, and so that's available as well. And they can find me on my website at momswithoutamom.com. I'm on Instagram, also at Moms Without a Mom. And I'm on Facebook
Okay.
as well.
Perfect. What do you do for your own self to release, reset, and recharge? How does Melissa release, reset, recharge?
I try and have fun every day. I play with my son a little bit, every day, just a few minutes. I'm not a good player, but I try to.
When you say
Uh,
play, you mean like video game play or just
Whatever
regular?
it can
Okay.
mean, it's whatever it is.
Sure,
It doesn't
sure.
matter. So I try and play, but I'm an introvert, so I like alone time. So I always need some
Mm,
quiet space to myself where I just kind of read. Um, I like going for walks and praying. So those are how I recharge and reset.
Love it. And what has been the best advice that has had the most impact on your life?
Two things. One, get enough sleep.
Mm.
And two, be unapologetically a mom.
Oh, I love that. Be unapologetically a mom. Oh, that's so true. Like, think of how many
Mhm.
times that a mom, my own experience, have been made to feel bad for mothering or whatever we're doing. Love that. Final thoughts to the podcast, YouTube, all the communities out there. You have the floor.
I want you to know that you are seen, you have value, and whatever you're going through, if there's any way that I can support you, just reach out. I'd be happy to do so.
Love it, Melissa. It's been a pleasure having you on. Continued blessings to you for love and light. Take care.